I think we ought to just get it on record. You opposed the Vietnam War, but you always supported our troops by voting for the war appropriations, didn't you?
Yes, and I may have erred in that. I felt at the time, and I think I still feel, that since these young men were there, not of their choosing, but at the call and command of their government, that though I disagreed with the strategy, the policy of having them there, once they were there, I felt obligated to provide the money, the funds, the equipment, the weapons, the material with which they could defend themselves and do the best they could with their mission. But it was such a horrible and historic mistake and blunder for our country. I say that I wonder sometimes if I wouldn't have been better off. I mean, if my record wouldn't have been something of more rectitude, if I had said, I oppose it, this is wrong, it's a mistake for our country, I'll not vote for any more money to support it. You remember Wayne Morris
Yes.
Took that view, and there may be a question about the wisdom of my view in that regard.
You knew all the presidents, Senator. I feel like it must have been a source of frustration to you, Democratic President Lyndon Johnson continuing the war, and you were opposed to the war, and that whole period of time, on one hand being pleased to have a Democratic president, and on the other hand involved in a situation like Vietnam.
Yes, this was a severe disappointment and frustration. I campaigned very hard for President Kennedy and President Johnson for his election in 1964. As you will recall, Wilkes, he was the peace candidate.
Exactly.
He said publicly, American boys shouldn't do what the South Vietnamese should do for themselves, and I don't remember his exact words, but the thrust and the meaning of what he said was to convey to the American people that he did not favor sending combat troops into the war in Vietnam. And I campaigned on that basis for him.
He carried Tennessee.
Yes.
Your assistant.
Yes.
You were running your third term for the United States Senate.
And I was strong at that time in Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
And I helped him. I learned soon after the election that plans were underway, movements were already being made, troops were already on the move, combat troops to go to Vietnam. Oh, I went to him in the White House, and we had a vigorous session. And the climax of the conference was he reviewed the history of the war, how Eisenhower had sent advisors and trainers, how President Kennedy had sent more advisors, provided more assistance. But he said now the war has reached a stage that I must either send in combat troops or withdraw. And I'll be blankety blank if I'll be the first president to run. Well, I didn't think it was a question of that the index of decision was whether he, Lyndon Johnson, would issue the orders to withdraw, and how that would affect his macho image. I thought the question was whether or not this would be the wise course for the United States of America. This was the break between President Johnson and me. It was never healed.
In 1964, you made a speech for negotiated peace, and you got a phone call from the president right after that.
President Johnson could be very sarcastic, very cutting in his remarks. I had made this speech in the Senate, and it was front page news and top news on television all over the country that night, advocating a negotiated settlement so we could get ourselves out of that quagmire. As soon as I got to the office the next morning, the telephone rang and White House was calling. He came on the telephone and he says, "Albert," I said, "Yes, Mr. President." "You look good on television last night." He emphasized looked. he didn't say what I said was good or advisable. I looked good. Well, we had a brief conversation